Hey, what's going on, everybody? So this week we have the Packers facing off against the Chicago Bears. Your classic, NFC North battle. The Packers going into Chicago to hopefully pull off a win. Considering I'm a Packers fan, that's what I want to see. If you're a Bears fan, you want to see the exact opposite. So far this year, the Packers are sitting atop the NFC North, but if the Bears were to win this game, the Packers and the Bears would have the same record. Right now, if you take a look at the NFC North standings, the Packers at the top, 4-1, with the Bears sitting at 3-2. So I want to go through and sort of give my thoughts on this game, some matchups I think that are going to be important, some things to watch out for, as well as my final score prediction at the end of this video. But if you guys are new here, you haven't subscribed, consider subscribing. I put out Packers content 1 to 2 times a day, so feel free to subscribe to the channel. So starting off, we have a Bears defense that has been, probably their strong suit. Their strong side of the ball is definitely their defensive side of the ball. We'll get to Justin Fields in that offense in a second, but starting off with their defense, they have one of the best defensive lines in the NFL so far this season. They have the most sacks in the NFL with 3.6 sacks per game. So the Bears' defensive line is great, and the Packers' offensive line has, struggled when it comes to injuries. But even though we've had lots of injuries on this offensive line, you guys know this Packers line has been pretty solid and I think held up much better than at least I personally expected. If you would have told me we'd be without David Bakhtiari as well as Elton Jenkins for 3+ games, I would not have thought that Aaron Rodgers would have been super safe in the pocket, but a few other guys have stepped up. Josh Nijman has stepped up, done pretty well out there, only allowed 2 sacks and 5 pressures in his, 3 games playing so far. And then this past week, Josh Myers, our rookie center, was also out. We had to throw Lucas Patrick in there, and the Packers overall, I'd say, had a pretty good job, did a pretty good job on the offensive line. So this week, Elton Jenkins and Josh Myers both could potentially be back for this Packers team. Elton Jenkins potentially could go back to left tackle. Josh Myers back at center. They both practiced yesterday, so I'm hoping that they can, play in this game, because if they can, this line is obviously going to be even better. But even if they can't play, I still think this line has shown us up to this point through the first 5 weeks of the season that they'll find a way to, protect Aaron Rodgers, a majority of the time. So it's going to be a tough task, I think, for this Packers offensive line, but I have hope and I have confidence that they can get the job done against Khalil Mack, Robert Quinn, a couple, great edge rushers on this Bears defense. If we take a look at the Bears' total defense, right now, they're the 8th best total defense, giving up 332.4 yards per game, so a top 10 defense. The Packers are actually 6th when it comes to total defense, which I think is pleasantly surprising for me so far this season, even though we've had tons of injuries on the defensive side as well. So this Bears team is going to be facing off against Aaron Rodgers, Davante Adams, Aaron Jones, who are just electric. If we take a look at Davante Adams, just how good he was last week, we all know this, but take a look at his stats again. Last week, 11 receptions, 206 yards, and 1 touchdown. So even when teams know that Aaron Rodgers is going to be targeting Davante Adams a majority of the time, they still, can't find a way to stop him, which I think just sort of shows just how great Davante Adams is. The fact that he gets double teamed, he has all the attention on him, and he still finds a way to get open. He still finds a way to get separation. I'd say he is, the best route runner in the NFL, and his connection with Aaron Rodgers is second to none. Plus, the fact that the Packers have been without Marquez Valdes-Scantling, who's been on the IR the past couple weeks, which really has, I think he's a guy who really opens the field, stretches the field just with his speed, how fast he is, and his ability to, get deep down the field. The Packers have been able to still move the ball in offense without having him there. So I think that's, that's positive news for this Packers team. And then Randall Cobb the past couple weeks with MVS out has been playing really good, especially in clutch situations. Him and Rodgers have that connection, in that game versus the Bengals. In overtime, it was like 3rd and 16, something like that, 3rd and a lot. Aaron Rodgers finds Randall Cobb, sets up the field goal that Mason Crosby came in and won. So I think having Randall Cobb here has really been I'd say a good addition to this team. In the offseason, that was, one of Rodgers', requests for him to stick around. That was seemingly what it was, that he wanted Randall Cobb to be here, or he may possibly not be in Green Bay. So I think that was a great move for the Packers to bring in Randall Cobb, because just in those clutch situations, Rodgers can trust Randall Cobb. So he has 2 guys I think that he trusts a lot in Davante as well as Randall Cobb. But I also think these other receivers he trusts as well, MVS as well as, Allen Lazard. So I think this Packers offense, it could be a tough test. It will be a tough test, because this Bears defense is really good. They've got a great pass rush, and if the Packers can't contain those guys, it could be tough for Aaron Rodgers. But overall, I think that the Packers offense, typically finds a way to get it done. Also having two of the best running backs. I'd say one of the best running back duos in the NFL with Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon as well. So I think this Packers offense still should be able to move the ball, but it will be a tough task, and it will be interesting to see, sort of what goes down on that front. Now moving over to the Bears offense versus the Packers defense. We have Justin Fields coming in here to start against the Green Bay Packers. He injured himself last week, but it seems that he should be good to go in this one. And so far, the Bears offense has been absolutely terrible, just completely terrible. They have been the worst offense in the NFL in total yards per game, 240 yards per game. So that shows just how good their defense has been, considering they have the worst offense in the NFL and they're still 3-2 at this point. Sort of just shows how good their defense has been. Right now, their passing offense, they're only averaging 113 passing yards per game, which is not good. And their rushing offense is a lot better, which is top 10, ninth in the NFL, averaging 126.8 rush yards per game. So we take a look last week when they beat the Raiders, who at least started off on fire 3-0, but have struggled the past couple weeks. They put up 143 rushing yards, averaging 3.9 yards per carry. In years past, I think I would have been a little bit more concerned, with just the Bears' rushing ability versus this Packers defense, because in the past, I'd say the Packers' rushing defense has struggled at times. But in the past 3 weeks, the Packers have actually been one of the best rushing defense teams in the NFL. In the past 3 games, they have only allowed 77.3 rushing yards per game, which is third best in the NFL. So that is awesome to see the Packers, getting it done on the defensive front, on the defensive line, because the first week or two, they were definitely struggling out there, but I think they've taken a huge step forward in these past couple weeks. I think we've seen this defense, step up time and time again. And then as I already mentioned earlier, the Packers do have the 6th best defense in total yards allowed, allowing only 322.6 points per game. So the Packers will be facing off against rookie Justin Fields, who I think, could have a potentially promising career in the NFL. He still is young, still making, I'd say, some rookie mistakes. But if we take a look at his past 2 games versus the Lions, 64.7% completion percentage, 209 yards, 0 touchdowns, 1 interception, and 82.7 rating. Then last week versus the Raiders, 60% completion percentage, 111 yards with 1 touchdown, 0 interceptions. So he hasn't been putting up monster numbers there for their offense, as I've already, said. So I do think he has lots of talent. But this Packers defense has been really good. The only area, that the Packers, I'd say, have a weakness right now is at cornerback, just because Jair Alexander is out, and who knows how long he's going to be out. And then Kevin King, who had a really solid game last week versus the Bengals, was actually the 3rd rated player on the defense by PFF, was really good last week. He could potentially miss this game as well with a shoulder injury that he suffered in that game versus the Bengals. So the Packers could be without 2 of their starting cornerbacks in this one, which would make it obviously a little bit harder, to face off against Justin Fields and, a couple weapons they have over there at the wide receiver position. The one thing I do like is the fact that, or I'm hopeful about, I guess, is Eric Stokes, Packers rookie cornerback, has been, I'd say, pretty solid. Last week, he gave up about 85 yards, I think, to Jamar Chase. But I saw a stat from NFL, I think it's NFL Next Gen Stats, that the receivers with the least amount of separation last week, Jamar Chase was one of the 5 guys who got the least amount of separation on his routes run. I don't have the exact number, but that just means that Eric Stokes was, playing tight coverage on him. A few of those balls that Jamar Chase caught, one was like a back shoulder throw, one other one was just an amazing catch. And obviously he's a great receiver, but Eric Stokes, was staying right with him lots of that game. And so I think that even though the Packers will be without Jair, possibly Kevin King, I think Eric Stokes will continue to, step up and improve on this Packers defense, being a rookie. Plus, the Packers did come in and bring in Rasul Douglas in the past week or two, also signed Quentin Dunbar to the practice squad. So we'll see if they elevate him at all, or sort of what's going to go down there. We have seen when Kevin King's been down, the Packers have put out Isaac Yiadom, cornerback over there, who the Packers added in this past year. But we'll see what happens there with the cornerback, but definitely an area with dealing with some injuries, as lots of this Packers team has been dealing with the injuries. And then if we take a look at this Packers pass rush, they've been getting pressure even though Zadarius Smith, our best outside linebacker, edge rusher, has been injured the entire season, and we have no idea when he will be back. But Kenny Clark's been dominant. And last week we sacked Joe Burrow 4 times, but one thing I really liked that I saw in that game was the fact that some of the guys outside of like Preston Smith and Rashawn Gary were getting pressure on the quarterback. Jonathan Garvin had 3 pressures last week, and Dean Lowry had 4 pressures last week. So I think that this Packers defensive line has been pretty good in improving, especially when it comes to getting to the quarterback. And the Chicago Bears line is probably one of the worst in the NFL. PFF does a offensive line ranking every single week, sort of ranking offensive lines. And here's what they had to say about the Chicago Bears. They put them at 31st overall. They had this to say. They said Chicago's offensive line has dealt with injuries, but even beyond that, the unit has been in over its head in some games. There were few bigger beatdowns than when the Bears group was annihilated by Myles Garrett and the Cleveland defensive front, rendering Justin Fields starting to be a no-hope exercise in which the team gained a single net passing yard over 60 minutes of play. The line hasn't been much better in the run game, with David Montgomery gaining 219 of his 309 rushing yards after contact before he got injured. Fields massively sped up his average time to throw against the Raiders in Week 5, but if that creeps back up over the remainder of the season, we will see the weakness of the line exposed far more readily once again. So I think this Packers line will be able to get some pressure on Justin Fields, but as I noted, depending on, how quickly Justin Fields gets the ball out of his hands, I think will depend or will factor into, how many times the Packers are able to pressure him and sack Justin Fields in this game. And so I think coming into this game, an NFC North battle between the Packers and the Bears, regardless of the teams past, lots of these games seem to be close, and so I do think it could be a good game. It is in Chicago, so the Bears have that going for them. But my score prediction for this game is going to be Packers 31, Bears 17. Let me know your score predictions down in the comments down below. But drop a like if you guys enjoyed this video. Subscribe if you guys want to see more Packers content. And if you haven't subscribed to my second channel, I put out videos not on the Packers, all other teams around the NFL I cover on that channel. So go check that one out, and that will be in the description down below. But thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next video.